and spotlight you.
Excellent.
Perfect. And take it away for us. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you so much. So, yeah, thank you for the nice recording. My presentation is going to be focused on roles and responsibilities. And for that, I think there's definitely this is an area that I think has not gotten enough attention, and so I'm happy to be presenting it here. I assume that most people here are a little bit familiar with accessibility, and this is not a 101 course. I sort of assume that most people have an understanding of why it matters and why how this is something that applies to government programs. I've given other talks on those as well, but my focus is going to be looking at roles and champions for this. So first of all, I wanted to let people know that the WCAG is not written for you. Neither is Section 508. This is I've got a photo, or not a photo, an illustration from the Noun project with two people and a question mark. So WCAG is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. It was written by a committee of people from a bunch of different institutions with different priorities. You have Google and academics and Mozilla and people from different accessibility communities getting together, trying to go off and come up with a set of best practices or principles around accessibility. And WCAG 2.0 was a big leap from WCAG 1.0, and it was built around the principles of perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. They're nice principles, but they're not aligned with the work that we do. It's not something that is built around the kind of skills and the kinds of tasks that web developers end up doing. Now, for WCAG 2.1 came out, I guess, a couple years ago. WCAG 2.2 just came out recently. WCAG 2.2 now contains 86 success criteria, and each of those has a techniques document that explains in more detail about how that's constructed. And again, it's not written for developers or designers. It's written very much for the best that a committee of people working together can to sort of come up with a set of agreed to text and principles. So it's great material to read if you want to go to sleep, but it's not really great if you want to understand how to go and to help implement to implement your project and to move ahead. Another issue with accessibility is that there's been a focus on trying to appoint subject matter experts, or SMEs. I've got an illustration here of a person with a badge. This represents the expert, and I think that often in organizations, an accessibility subject matter expert was appointed in order to understand the risk and to manage that risk, and to make sure that there would be some corporate accountability to see that an organization was not going to fail Section 508 compliance. And in many organizations, experts have become bottlenecks in the project lifecycle. So it's left to the end, and often they're not sufficiently resourced, and you've got a person who's trying to go off and to juggle multiple priorities and also keep up with ongoing changes in accessibility best practices. So accessibility accessibility best practices change in order to keep up the web. The internet is changing rapidly, as you know, and the best practices today may not be the same as they are in 6 months' time. So it's important to try and keep up with those. And for a subject matter expert, it's very difficult because there's a lot of different kinds of accessibility issues and different technology that somebody would need to be able to understand how to go off and operate and understand where the barriers might be for that. So many projects still bring in the accessibility experts at the end of the project, or slightly after it's launched as well. And this is not a great practice, because if you wait till the end of a project to go off and begin accessibility testing, it is both more brittle and also more expensive. So please try and shift left, which is in the project management cycle, trying to think about accessibility early and often. So the other thing about a subject matter expert is that they may be an expert in the use of assistive technology, but the web has just gotten more complicated, and so it's unlikely that they are an expert in design or development or content creation. And it's there's a lot of different roles that are involved in creating modern websites. So that's a challenge. The web has gotten more complicated. I have a picture here of a woman with a confusing who's confused. Again, this is another noun project illustration. And when WCAG 1.0 was released, which was actually Section 508 was released, I think initially was released in 98, and WCAG 1.0 was released in, I think, 99. And then WCAG 2 was released just after Steve Jobs introduced the first iPhone. So if you think back about it seems like forever ago that we've had iPhones and learned to live with iPhones. But what most government organizations in the US are working towards is a set of best practices that was published as a best practice at the year after the iPhone was released. And you think about responsive design, you think about how there's all of the changes that have happened in web accessibility, in the web, in the development of the web, how we use the web even. Our expectations for the web are so much different than they were back in the early 2000s. So we use the web for banking, for application development, for the front end, for APIs, for engaging with our friends, it's become a really critical part of how we interact socially and also how we conduct business, and engage with our governments and so much more. So as the web has gotten more complicated, there have been introductions of other things. Initially, there was accessibility was largely around HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But in the last few years, we've seen a rapid adoption of ARIA, which is the Web Accessibility Initiative's accessible rich internet applications. So ARIA is a way of adding additional semantics to the web. And again, this is something that changes over time, because the best practices around how to add and modify those semantics for a dynamic web are changing. And it's important to try and manage that. But there's a lot more specialized knowledge needed to implement and maintain this. And the industry as a whole has moved from building pages and websites to building experiences and services. So how are we thinking about the web, and how we're trying to build sites for government agencies is definitely changing over time. So accessibility is a team sport. I have a picture of two hockey sticks and a puck, because I'm a Canadian, and we've got to throw in hockey references if you're a Canadian. So like security, we need to start seeing accessibility as part of everyone's job. We can't simply go off and allow somebody else to take care of it. We need to think about what are the implications of accessibility to us and what we do. And this can apply to almost anyone who works with digital in this day and age. So accessibility subject matter experts have a particular role, but so do all the other roles. And it's trying to sort of think about what are the elements of your role and how you define quality, that are things that are tie into the accessibility success criteria and engagement with with people with disabilities who you're ultimately trying to serve. So digital teams need to work together to build quality experiences, and this needs to include accessibility, just like it needs to include security. Let's by trying to think about accessibility as a team sport, it's a way of finding it allows us to find new ways to work together. It's not we can't just simply take an issue and say it's the accessibility subject matter experts responsibility, or the front end people, they have to take care of it, or for that matter, our content people. We need to think about the errors that we're seeing and what are the responsibilities that each role has. So I've got 4 great government examples that I'm going to just talk about briefly. And as for the logo, I have the USDS, US Digital Services logo, and it's tilted sideways just because I needed to fit it on the page. So there are 4 different organizations that I'm going to be touching on briefly. One is the USDS, and their accessibility for teams document. The other is the UK's Department of Work and Pensions, as well as they have a guidance for your job role. Australia also has the ABC, or their Australian Broadcasting Corporation, has accessibility tips for teams. And finally, New Zealand has the Web Accessibility Guidance Project. So this is not something that is new to government, and most of these have been published for several years. The links to these are all in the slides, and Hannah will be making sure that the slides are available afterwards. There are links in the slides themselves, but also in the notes. So feel free to take a look at them after the presentation and dig in for more detail. So the CivicActions website also has a few more examples, and you can get to our subsite at accessibility.civicactions.com, and there'll be a link to that later as well. So with the USDS site, they've just as an example, they have looking at content design. They have it broken down for images and steps to take, and they have questions that are geared to that particular role, and it's written in a way that's very user-friendly and very easy for a content author to look at it and be able to understand what the implications are for them and to help them move along the process. There's also a bunch of videos with specific references to the WCAG 2.0 success criteria that this information applies to. And finally, there's a video, and this isn't a U.S. government video. This is in this case this is a Udacity video. So they're able to pick from the best videos out there to describe different elements of content design and how that affects them. There's also a similar one for visual design, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I wanted to sort of highlight some of the differences. Again, it's following a very simple, similar format. It's very, very very accessible and text forward. But you also have the different WK criteria and finding the video. And this one here is from the Chrome developers community. Now, if you look back at the other videos, or sorry, the other organizations, and look at some of the work that they do in your own time, you'll see that there's different definitions of how they align and break down the roles. Because there's no universal set of criteria for how teams are organized. So it's useful to try and to just be aware that there's those changes. So I'm going to go back, and just a moment. I've just momentarily lost my monitor, which will come back in a moment, and that should work. Sorry about that. I'm not sure where my monitor is, but it's not. This has happened before, but usually not during a presentation, so I apologize for that.
If it doesn't come back, Mike, do you want me to share my screen and pull up your slides?
I think it'll be just is that's annoying. How would that? It's amazing how technology has the ability to break when you least are capable of responding to it. Like prepared for all kinds of things, but not the monitor just deciding to turn off. But hopefully this works. I just after wiggling some cables. And it does not seem to be working, which is exciting.
I can share the slides if that works for you, Mike.
That would be great. In fact, I can if you could just share the slides, I will go and go from my you can knock me out of the slide deck and access it easy enough.
Okay, we'll do. All right, can you all see that? Oh, can you all see the slides? Where am I? Sorry.
So you will be on automated and manual testing is the next slide we're running on.
Is this right?
I can't tell you.
Oh, you can't see. All right. Oh, automated and manual testing. All right, I'm on it.
Perfect. I'll go from there. And so then you'll see that there's a heart for accessibility insights. This is the logo for one of the tools that I'll be talking about. If you can click next, you'll see the text. So you can see Andy, Wave, the Axe Dev Tools, Accessibility Insights, Pally plus Axe, Purple Alley is another one of the tools. So I did want to go off and just because we have somebody from WebAIM here, just highlight how useful the Wave toolbar is. And I'll be bringing that up a bit later again, but it's one of the most user-friendly introductions to accessibility that I've seen on the web, and they've done a wonderful job as an institution to try and provide resources around accessibility best practices, and it's definitely a go-to. So hopefully people will have a chance to go to the Wave to WebAIM or wave.webaim.org or to just webaim.org if they want to see access to the resources. But because many of the people here are from government, I wanted to just highlight the Andy tool. So Andy is a tool produced by SSA, and it has a lot of functionality built into it, but it's just a bookmarklet. So if you have a limited security access, Andy is something like if you're not able to install extensions or run programs generally on your machine because it's a government machine, there's a good chance you'll be able to set up Andy and use that as a bookmarklet because that's how it was developed to go off and to be implemented in more locked down government environments. I also really like the Axe Dev Tools. This is from DQ. It's particularly useful for dealing with modern websites that leverage the shadow DOM. The shadow DOM is something that, again, an example of how much more complicated the web is because it's not just dealing with the HTML and the DOM. There's also web components that are being built that allow for more complexity. I really like the Accessibility Insights tool because it's by Microsoft. So again, it's a little bit easier for people to install in Microsoft offices, and most government agencies are a bit more Microsoft oriented, so it should be easier to go off and connect onto Edge. But it uses Axe as the default engine for that. There's also Pally plus Axe, which is useful for development environments, so that ideally your developers should be checking for accessibility so that there are no accessibility errors that get brought into production websites. at least no automated errors that can be caught using these automated machines or these automated scripts. So Pally is a great way to do that. There's also another tool that'll be highlighting in more detail called Purple Alley, which crawls a website, again using the Axe accessibility engine. You may have heard of Google Lighthouse. It's a tool that looks at performance and SEO, but it also has an accessibility engine that's part of that. And they use the Axe dev tools as well. So it's become very much a best practice for efforts to try and address accessibility issues with open source. But no accessibility is sufficient by just using automated tools. You also need to use manual approaches as well. So keyword only testing is really important. Zoom testing is also like just trying to zoom in so that your page is at 200%. Can you navigate the site if your web page is expanded? Looking at alt text, the Wave toolbar is great for this. Actually, it's one of the best tools to look at the alt text of images, because oftentimes the images for alt text is really quite terrible. And it's useful to look at the alt text that your authors are providing to make sure that alt text is decent. Also checking for high contrast mode in Windows. I also really think it's useful to think about using new tools like the immersive reader mode that is built into many browsers. Edge does a particularly good job of it, and it's again useful to have an audio experience of your website. And the reader mode in Edge gives you a really good human understandable oral experience for your website. So it's worthwhile looking at that. And there's going to be people who use your website as part of that. I've also got another note on screen note on screen readers. Screen reader testing is really important, but it's more difficult to test with screen readers than most people think. It's hard to understand the basics of how to if you're sighted and you're engaging with the web, especially with a site you built, it's difficult to understand how to go off and navigate that orally and to forget all the stuff that you've learned about the website from your visual interactions. So there's people certainly who can do that, who've had enough training and enough exposure to blind users, or who, in fact, if they are blind users or low vision users, that they're able to have a good explanation or a good understanding of the limitations for screen readers. But for most anyone other than an accessibility subject matter expert, I don't recommend that people test with screen readers on a regular basis, because often you'll bring with you assumptions about how the web, or how if something is accessible or not, because you're able to do it, not realizing that all the assumptions that you've learned about your website or about the configuration. It's useful for some things, but there's limited approaches to that. So I will now go on to the next slide, which is about the Purple Alley desktop. And sorry that there's animations in this, Hannah, so that makes it extra confusing. Are you on the page with the Purple Alley desktop?
I am.
Marvelous. I definitely should have I didn't anticipate this happening quite like this. Yes. So I just have a few screenshots from this I wanted to show. Purple Alley it's a desktop crawling tool. So there are tools, commercial tools like SiteImprove, and there's a lot of agencies or organizations that sell commercial crawling services for government and educational institutions. Those are fine. They can be a wonderful tool to assist organizations. But I also feel that often they the money goes towards the tool and not towards actually making sure that there's people hired to fix the bugs. And I really want to try and make sure that we're able to fix the accessibility issues. So Purple Alley is a tool that was developed by the government digital services in Singapore. So it's similar to the UK's government digital service or USDS or 18F. It's a similar sort of in Colorado digital services. It's part of that sort of digital services family, and they built this open source tool using Axe that provides these excellent reports. So you can find out, I scanned 2,000 pages of the White House and got a report back in it's less than an hour that gave me lists of errors that were from the website, and if you click on the next window, you can see some of the expanded options. So you can see how different elements are highlighted and what some of the how the reports are filled out when you interact with the HTML report that's available. And then finally, there's a detailed view that actually highlights both what it would look like if you want to track this down. So there's a URL, there's an XPath or a path that provides a machine readable version that you can search for within your browser. There's also the HTML snippets and some instructions about what they think should be done to go off and fix this issue. And so this is a really useful tool to be able to quickly get a sense of what some of the problems are on a system level with your website. And because it's both something that can be done at the command line, it's something that your DevOps or a developer can do fairly easily because it's part of that. But there's also a desktop app, so that's quite simple to generate as well. You don't have to be a developer to go off and install this because there's this application. Finally, it has a CSV and a PDF version as well, so it's easy to share the information and to manipulate this information so that you can keep track of that. And it's an open source project, so you can fork it and customize it as much as you want to. And again, if you've got the CSV version of the information, you can sort for the errors and say, what are the errors that pertain to visual? What are the elements that tie into that touch on the product team? What are the elements that you can break it down by subject, by the both the impact, because it acts as an impact score that's quite useful to sort of understand the severity of the errors, but also by tying it into the WCAG area, you can say what role would be mostly associated with that and sort of and have it tracked that way as well. So next slide. So users are the map and not the terrain. And I have a picture here of a pin like there is common on maps. So many people at the federal level will have heard about the Office of Management and Budget's the M2408. This may not be something that has filtered down to the state and local level, but it's something that a lot of certain federal government accessibility people are aware of, because it really did shift a lot of the direction that the federal government is looking to move for future accessibility efforts. And one of the things that they talk about is trying to do user research with people with disabilities. So there's I think that I'm part of the WC3 as an invited expert. I believe in standards and the value of standards, but standards are really a codification of best practices. So it's just taking that experience and trying to bring that down into something that is everyone can agree that we should be doing this. The real users, though, are experts. We need to sort of realize that people with disabilities are the people who can best tell us whether or not they're able to access our services or not. So one of the things that the M2408 memo does is it actually encourages agencies explicitly to do user research with people with disabilities, and to help make sure that that this isn't something that is being forgotten, because as many experts there are, as many people evaluate the WCAG or Section 508 standards and are trying to go off and follow those best practices, it really helps to remember that to be user-centered, we need to start regularly including people with disabilities in our evaluations of the needs of users. Another step towards this, which is also mentioned in the M2408 memo, is the need for accessibility statements. And these accessibility statements really need to have an active feedback loop that allow you to go off and to listen to the needs of your users. Again, this provides a different set of skills and experience, because you're going to need user researchers who understand how to conduct forums, to engage with users and gather feedback from users, and be able to communicate with them in a way that is able to not only fix their technical problem, but also make sure that they feel like they've been heard and are able to hopefully manage with their task between reporting the problem and it being fixed. Next slide. So generally, what are the roles? I've got a picture of a woman with a pencil or a pen rather, so if you click onto this, the WC, the next frame, we can get to the text. So the WC3's accessibility roles and responsibilities mapping is a group that's been meeting to try and align the WC3 success criteria to different business roles, and to make sure that that's something that is structured. It should actually, there's two breaks in this, which does make it a bit more complicated, but you should see text all around the woman with the glasses. There's the content such as the business analyst. There's the content authoring publishing roles. There's UX roles, visual design roles, front end, back end, testing roles, product roles, and governance roles. And this is something that we've tried to boil down into sort of broader criteria of business, author, design, development, testing, and administration. Now, in your organization, you might have different ways of slicing and dicing the different roles, but hopefully there'll be things that can fit roughly into these broader categories for users. Next slide. So now we're at example, primary, secondary, and contributor roles. So the ARM group, which is the Accessible Roles and Responsibilities Mapping team, took WCAG 2.1 and broke up all of the 78 success criteria into different roles. And I should have said that there was hands and gears as the image for this. So there's we wanted to look at how people begin to actually break this down. So there's different roles and criteria, and that are based on the broader groups that we've defined. There are people that who are, or certain roles rather, that are heavily involved. Like you can see that the UX role has quite a few primary, secondary, or contributor elements to address the different success criteria, where there's less places where a business role or a content role would be something that would would interact with these different success criteria. Again, your organization may decide to map them differently and may decide to interpret how the success criteria or the responsibilities for the success criteria are made for different roles. But if you only have a handful, if you only have a third or half of the total success criteria that you need to learn, it's something you can get into much more detail on and have a lot deeper understanding about. For content authors, there's a lot of WCAG that they can ignore because it's not really relevant to them. Same with people who are involved in the design of the site. They don't. There's elements where they may need to know about the semantics, but they just need to know necessary like how do we provide the visual affordance for keyboard as well as mouse interactions? How do we make sure that if we're providing a semantic visual implementation, that there will be an equivalent text version that can be made available to assistive technology like screen readers. So again, this is a breakdown of different roles. If we go to the next slide. So accessibility roles can cross several barriers, and I've got a picture of roadblocks gained from the Noun project. And Hannah, I assume you're doing a terrific job because I can't actually verify that, but I, if you need me to slow down or
I think I'm keeping up.
Okay, good. At least I shared the slides with you beforehand, so you had some idea of what they were. So in terms of the if you look at the accessibility roles and responsibilities mapping, then there's links in the notes of the slides. You'll see that there's examples that are pointed to that highlight how the different roles are broken down and how we've interpreted the responsibilities might lay based on our understanding of and experience working with different teams implementing digital interfaces. But this may not apply to you. You may need to go off and figure out how your teams are organized and how your people might be addressing different accessibility challenges that are there. So often if it's a simple issue where there's only one role involved, it can be addressed quite quickly because if the color contrast isn't right in the style guide, that's going to be something that a visual designer is going to be responsible for. If an author hasn't included alt text, again, it's very simple, but you need to be for the more complicated, the more roles that are involved, the more likely an issue is to be sitting and unaddressed. So it's important to try and address to try and figure out ways of addressing that. Also, the more people you have discussing accessibility issues and how a certain issue or success criteria will affect a different role, I think the more quality you're going to have, because you'll have different roles will have better understandings of the challenges of the corresponding team's work. Next slide. The complexity of government websites. I've got an image of people holding hands in a circle. Government websites are really complicated. You know this. And I think that just wanted to go off and to say that for most government agencies, especially if contractors are involved or other teams are involved, it can be quite difficult because there's going to be different incentives lined up that may make it very difficult to deliver a site because you're not necessarily going to have an alignment between them. So try and think about how you're able to simplify the process and bring in the business owner where possible to prioritize things. This is especially important for agile because if a product owner does not prioritize accessibility and doesn't see it as something that is important to them, it's just not going to be implemented in the project. It's something that will not happen on its own. It has to be something that the project owner and the client team cares about and prioritizes. Sites need to also work with their design systems to make sure that those design systems reflect the needs of the website and that the patterns that are being built are ones that reflect the needs of site builders. So there's a communication that's needed between our more complicated government websites and the people who are trying to implement them. Next, please. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So Peter Drucker, as I've got a picture of a coffee and a croissant. Peter Drucker's quote is quite useful, but it applies to accessibility policy too. You can't just sort of make a policy and assume that people will implement it. Governments have had Section 508 requirements for over 2 decades, and yet there's still lots of inaccessible websites. Trying to go off and build a organization and maintain a culture of accessibility is something that is a lot of effort, and it needs to be something that is done intentionally and maintained intentionally. Next slide. Build champions to improve the culture of accessibility. Got a picture of a woman with a megaphone and over a desk or a speaker with a bunch of hearts. I think it's a speech bubble, actually, not a desk. I wanted to touch on the champions model just briefly. The BBC started this. It's really useful to go off and to think about how we can onboard people into accessibility and think about bringing them into bring awareness and raise awareness around accessibility best practices. Having a roles-based approach can also help with that. But there's some other examples that are useful from other accessibility organizations that have taken on a championship approach. Definitely supportive of signing up to groups or to free events like GAD, Global Accessibility Awareness Day, which is happening in May. Also events like Inclusive Design 24 and the International Day for Persons with Disability, as well as AXCON. Like there's lots of so many free resources out there and so many great certifications available as well. Next slide. Align with organizational objectives. This is my slide is trying to address OKRs, or the objectives and key results. Accessibility has to be more than just compliance. It has to be part of how we interact with people, with our staff, with our clients, with our suppliers. It's something that we don't think about people with disabilities on a day-to-day basis, but especially in an increasingly digital world, we have no idea what kinds of disabilities people have, and what kind of interaction or user interface they're dealing with. I think it's useful to keep in mind that there's opportunities for leadership within accessibility, and opportunities to move beyond the silos as well, to engage with other teams and to learn from each other and find ways to challenge and improve the quality of the work that's being done by our teams. Next slide, please. You aren't alone in working for better inclusion. Got a slide with a bunch of heads, and there's four sort of icons of heads of different kinds. And I wanted to encourage people to search for champions, accessibility champions. If you go to the accessibility.civicactions.com site, you can find some information, resources that we've made available about our accessibility champion program and the work we do in onboarding staff. Every staff for CivicActions is onboarded about accessibility and what the best practices are. So there's a basic orientation. We also try and give people the WC3. They have the WC3 has an edX course that's free, and we try and we pay for the certification. So there's a process whereby we have staff who are certified through the WC3 and the edX program to learn more about basic accessibility. There's also lots of examples on champions programs within the BBC and AbilityNet. Intuit has done some amazing stuff. Ted Drake in particular has provided some really wonderful advice and guidance for organizations. His perspective was from the private sector, but it's great to see that. There's also a talk on at AXCON. AXCON is a great open source event led by DQ, and they have information on from AxCon, they have, what do they have? They've got a talk from somebody from Twitter back when Twitter was working on accessibility and looking at their accessibility champions program. So again, it's a different model, and the videos are free. You just need to sign up and register in order to see past year's events. I also wanted to add, just again, touching on WebAIM again, they just released the WebAIM Million survey for this year, and there's lots of interesting resources for governments who who may notice a change in their status. Right now for government agencies, and the WebAIM Million is only evaluating the top domain. So for governments that often have a lot of subdomains, that may be something that is where some sites that are very popular are not being included in the WebAIM Million survey this year because it's something that is yeah, because they needed to be able to provide more coverage and support things, but it does affect the government and education sector more than most because of the work that because of the use of subdomains. But it's definitely wanted to reach out to that. And as part of the CivicActions onboarding program, I also wanted to say that we use the WebAIM Wave toolbar as part of our onboarding because it's really the easiest introduction to accessibility widgets or browser extensions that there is at this point, and we tend to think of it sort of like training wheels around accessibility. That if you use a tool like Wave or Accessibility Insights, that you can get a sense, but before you try and understand the WCAG success criteria, you can get sort of bite-sized pieces of what the accessibility barriers are and who they affect. So it's a great introduction. But back to the champions network, because that's the point of this portion of the presentation. If you're interested in learning more about champions, there's also a network that is open to people, that allows that's on LinkedIn, and if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I'll be able to go off and yeah, include or send you an invite to the Champions of Accessibility Network. And they have regular monthly meetings to talk about approaches to setting up an accessibility champions program in an organization like yours. There's about 2,000 people that are part of it from government and private sector organizations around the world. But it's a great opportunity to learn from the UK government and the BBC and Intuit and others, people who've been pioneering this more cultural approach of addressing accessibility and seeing that there's a change in how organizations begin to think about accessibility. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. And you did an excellent job leading a presentation while not directing it yourself. So thank you for that. And thank you all for your flexibility. I'm just going to take us off recording.